I want to welcome you to another episode of the Self-Made Podcast. This is Haas Pratt, and this podcast is where we show you how to become self-made and dominate your niche, and that is what we are all about. Everybody that we bring on here are people that have their own self-made story, and today is no different. You know, we've got Jay Matthiesen, who is a fellow Dallasite, I guess you could say, lives here in Dallas, the same area as me. Jay is a real estate entrepreneur, developer, and an alternative finance expert. And I've got a lot of questions here, but I'm going to bring on our guest, Mr. Jay Matthiesen. Welcome to the Self-Made Podcast.
Thanks, Haas. Glad to be here.
Yeah, buddy. It's good to have you. So, Jay, I know a lot about you, but I want our audience to know more. So give us the 30,000-foot view, because I've got several questions I want to ask you about your journey. But kind of give us the overall 30,000-foot view of how you got to where you are today and what you do.
So I went to college and became a licensed architect, and that's primarily how I got into real estate. I grew up in Oklahoma, poor. My father's a Baptist preacher. He's still a preacher today, even at his age of, I don't know, is he 80, 81, somewhere in there. And didn't really know much about, didn't know anything about real estate growing up. Wasn't raised in it, wasn't trained in it, just had a knack for drawing, and one of my high school teachers recommended I go off to school and be an architect. And so I followed that path. It was a long, winding path. I ended up getting my license, becoming an architect, and along the way figuring out that real estate development was where the money was being made, not being the architect. And so I decided to transition into that and went through a lot of trials and tribulations doing that. And along the way, developed some really good sources of capital. And that one thing led to another. And now we run a real estate lending business, kind of a private shop real estate lender. And we compete with banks. And we're going to do $1 billion plus this year in loans. So
that's great.
That's how we got started.
Well done. So I want to just dig into this. So take me back to when you were an architect. So you went to college, you became an architect. How long were you an architect for?
So I started practicing architecture in 1998, and I practiced till 2009, about 10 years, 10 to 11 years.
Did you like it?
I did. I still miss it sometimes. There's a lot of camaraderie that goes on with that and team building, especially if it's a good real estate project. You've got a great real estate developer who has a vision and wants to get everybody behind that vision to make it happen. And I miss that part of it. I miss the travel. In my early years, I worked for an international firm, and I got to travel a lot and see a lot of different things, which probably I look back on those experiences more than I do the regional time that I spent, just because of all the different things I got to see.
Right.
It's just good. It was good.
So one day you wake up and you say, I'm done with this architect stuff. The developers are the ones making all the money. And apparently, I'm sure you probably went through a period of frustration and take us into that period of you getting to the end of architecture and then breaking into being a developer.
So it's really kind of funny. It didn't happen quite like that. That's the way I tell the story, but that's not really how it happened. What happened was I wanted to make more money, but the other thing was, being an architect, I worked with developers all the time. And these guys would come in and they would say, oh, that costs too much. We can't do that. And they would just rip all the bells and whistles off of everything all the time. And as an architect, it's quite frustrating because, you feel that these certain bricks or this stone or this whatever on the building is going to be, that's what's going to make it, right? And so I really got tired of that. And I thought, you know what? These idiots, they don't understand. They don't get the iPhone concept that good design will always equal more dollars. Not in getting it built necessarily, but in selling it later. Apple has demonstrated this repeatedly with their products. Good product design wins hands down every day. Even if people don't understand what's going on, they go, I like that. I don't know why I like it, but I like it and I'm willing to pay more for it. So the same holds true for architecture, and that was the part that was frustrating to me. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to do some deal. I want to do some deals on my own, and I want to do it my way. And I have the right to spend whatever I want to spend. And it's on me if it doesn't make financial sense, or it's on me if it does make financial sense and I'm spending a little more, but I get more for it. So that's how I got started in this. That's what really drove me into it. Is that
You know what it is, Jay? It's the artist's curse, right, buddy? I mean,
exactly
it's like
what it is.
It is. Like I'm the same way. I was just talking about it to a guy about this yesterday. I said I'm the worst at customer support because when somebody has a problem with a product or something that I wrote, right? I'm the artist. Like I took this personal. Like, what do you mean? And I would fight for it. And we were talking about the artist's curse. And as you're saying that, I'm envisioning myself, right? Like,
yeah,
you got this big grand plan of how it needs to look, and then they're coming in saying, no, let's do this and different. And it's like, but that's not what I prepared.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened all the time. And it was, over time I learned some things that were kind of interesting. One of the things is we had a project one time, a Mercedes dealership. I won't say where, but we spec'd these door handles that were like $400 a set. Well, they were really sexy looking. But when we got the project done, I went to visit the project and I saw the door handles. I'm like, okay, we could have saved the client about $200 a set if we'd have gone with the standard issue door handle that comes from the factory. And frankly, I don't know how many people really noticed that we bought this sexier, cooler looking door handle. And so, I've learned that there's some limits to, where the spending needs to go on. But I always felt like when I got started as an artist, you're right, as an artist, that too many of the good things were being ripped off the building for the sake of putting money in someone's pocket.
Yeah.
So.
And I talk about this as a pivot, and this is what my question is, because the skill sets of people that are great as an architect are different, I assume, of the skills of somebody that's a developer. Because you're experiencing this as you're saying this, what the developer looks for versus what the architect looks for. And when you pivoted and you went from being an architect to, I'm going to go do my own deals, I'm going to become a developer. Here's my question. What did you not know that you now know, right? That maybe was what you didn't know. And like in that leap, what did you like when you, oh crap, I didn't know this and I thought it was this way?
Yeah, well, there were quite a few things that were that way.
Sure.
And I discovered all of them along the way.
The hard way, in the trenches?
And the hard way.
Yeah.
Like Frank Sinatra says, I did it my way. Well, I went and did it my way. And then I found out, hey, we didn't make as much money as we could have made. One of our first deals, it's funny now looking back on it, but I could still strangle the banker every time I see him. We built a townhome project. It was going great. We were pre-selling houses. The things were flying off the shelf. The economy crashes. Bank calls the note. Says, yeah, you guys need to pay off your loan. Well, like, why? We're in the process of getting done so we can sell. Well, the economy's bad. We need our money back, And I'm like, I never thought the bank would call and say, hey, we need our loan back. We don't care. We don't care if you're finished. We don't care, I never thought of that. I really stepped in a big one there. And that was a tough one to swallow, but we got through it.
But there was some outside forces, though, that were against you, right? I mean, like the economy crashed.
But, as a developer, as a new developer, I didn't realize that. I just never thought about it, I thought, oh, the bank, that's what they do. That was a misconception on my part. So that was one of the things that happened. I'll tell you another funny story. One of our very first projects, we partnered with a builder. And the builder said, yeah, I'll bring all the money. You guys just design the building and I'll get it built. So I designed the building. I was still working at the time. And so I was doing this on the side. And I said, hey, we need to get an actual architect. We need to hire someone and let them finish up the plans and make sure everything's right before you start building this thing. And he looked at it and said, no, it's fine. I can take care of it. So about 2 months in, he calls and says, hey, I've got a problem with the stairs in the building. I can't seem to make them work. And I said, did you get an architect? No, I didn't do any of that. Well, then it's on you because I told you. Well, needless to say, Next thing you know, the investor shows up that put all the money in the deal with this builder and says, hey, he went off and did this without telling us about it. That's the first problem we have. And the second problem is we don't know who you guys are. And, you know, we had dinner over this whole thing. And by the time I was done with dinner, they realized that I was the only guy in the room they could probably trust, and they couldn't trust the builder. So over the next few months, there was a bunch of haggling in court between the investor and the builder. And the next thing you know, they tear all the buildings down and start over. I mean, how's that for one of your first projects, you know, to watch it? It was halfway, 2/3 erected, and they tear the whole thing down and start over. So, you know, but those are the kind of weird things that we never thought through, or I didn't think about when I was going into them. The numbers made sense on them. And so we thought it was a good deal. And, you know, it's just part of life.
You know, and by the way, you're listening to the Self-Made Podcast. We got Jay Matthiesen with us, real estate entrepreneur, developer, alternative finance expert. And Jay, this is great because as you're sharing this story, I'm just reliving some of my own experiences of when I've done something that I didn't know what I was getting into, and I had to learn everything the hard way. But here's my question, because, you know, we're talking to the self-made nation, the people that, you know, want to succeed against all odds. Is it required to go through that pain of learning things the hard way? I mean, could anybody have been on the other side over there going, no, Jay, go left, no, go right? Like, looking back, did you have to go through that pain in order to be who you are today?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, I went at it from a different tack than a lot of people would ever try to go through it. I mean, that's just me. I always am doing things the wrong way to start with. That's just the way I am. I would rather jump off the end of the pier and try to figure out how to swim than to be coached through it by someone else. Right. You know, a better way to, I mean, part of the problem was when we did that first project, all the developers we knew said, y'all are nuts. That thing doesn't make any money. And we're like, no, it does. It makes about $1 million. And they were like, that's nothing. And to me, that was a lot of money. I was like, holy shit, I could make $1 million on this thing, and right. I'm still working my day job. What kind of guy would I be? I'll be rolling up in the Range Rover at the office, and the partners don't even have those, you know? Now, the dollar signs did not cloud my judgment too much, but we still thought it was a good opportunity. To get back to your question though, you know, I think people could, you know, if you want to make a transition into something different, get with people who have already done it and try to learn from them. You know, one of the best lessons I ever learned in life was I used to work construction when I was in my late teens, early 20s. Worked for HB Zachary, a big construction company. And they put me with this old fart, and I really hated it because I thought I was going to get all these baby jobs that weren't hard and, you know, nothing was going to go wrong. And one day we are given a job to go build some formwork by the foreman, and we go out, and all day I'm out there in the sun hammering stakes in the ground with a sledgehammer, putting up formwork. You know, the guys are tying steel, and I'm sitting there going, okay, are we done yet? And he's like, no, keep putting stakes on it, keep putting braces on it. I'm like, why? It doesn't need it. He goes, I'm like, and so about 50 yards away, they were building the same exact formwork for another. These were motor pads for big motors. So they were building another motor pad, and they were kind of done. And they had like a few braces on it. And I thought, well, if theirs is okay, ours ought to be okay. So I'm arguing with him about it. Well, here's the old fart. He's 60 plus years old, and he's telling me no. So he said, you just wait. He goes, you keep putting braces on that till I say stop. So finally we got done with the day. We went home. We come back the next day. It's concrete day. They're going to pour the concrete in these things. They come over and pour our deal first. He goes, now look here, you watch this. So they poured our deal. It stayed and it held. They moved the truck down to the next place. They poured that thing. It was completely full, and it exploded, and concrete went everywhere. Those guys got the pleasure of jackhammering all that stuff out the next day. And he's like, you see that right there? That's why I told you to put more braces on it. He goes, don't you think you ought to listen to me? And I said, 10-4.
Yeah, right.
And I questioned him again. And the lesson I went away with on that was, hey, what if I could learn everything he already knew? How much smarter would I be at my age? And how much farther in life could I get if I could stand on his shoulders with all his knowledge? Look how much higher I could reach.
Right.
And I've taken that lesson with me all my life. I haven't always obeyed it, but I try to remember that. And I think anybody that wants to get into something else, go find someone that can mentor them. Go find someone that can help, help point out where the landmines are. So at least so you're not getting in too much trouble,
Right. No, this is great. In your story, what I see is my mentor, Jimbo, used to tell me, he said, stay with one field and become a master of that field. And like, for me, it's been real estate. That's real estate speaking. And I've found the opportunity into each of these, everything that I have in real estate. And I look at your story as the same way. Like, you started in construction as a teenager, early 20s. You go to college and you become the architect. You did architecture. Then you went to developing. And then you did developing for a while. And then you found the money.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, your story, how many years is that? Is that 20, 30
Well,
years?
That would be, I'm 50 today, so that's 30 years, but you need to back that up a little farther.
Okay.
Because my uncle was a carpenter in Western Oklahoma, and during the summers, like when I was 14, 15, even when I was 10 or 12, I would go up there and help him build houses in the summer. So I was around construction all the time, and if I wasn't doing construction, they had big wheat farms, and so I was on the tractor plowing the fields. I was doing whatever. I was always working at something.
That's awesome.
That's just been my mentality my entire life. I'm always working at something.
And you stuck to the real estate
you're right. Something I don't say very often, but I spent a lot of time as an architect soul searching about what am I supposed to do? And, case in point, I went out and got an MCSE. I thought that I might want to go into computers, and I was a whiz at it. I am a whiz at it. But I just decided, I got it done. I got the license from Microsoft, and I thought I'm going to go get a job as an IT administrator in somebody's office. Well, one day, I was asked at the architecture firm to start running the IT department. Well, I did. Then I suddenly realized, holy cow, the administrator guy is overhead on our payroll. I don't want to be someone's overhead because I don't offer that much value as overhead, and I'm replaceable. And so I walked away from that, and I went back to soul searching and said, what am I supposed to be doing? And the natural path for me seemed to be, I need to stay in real estate. I've done construction. I've done architecture. This seems to be the natural place for me. And so this progression is really, I'm like a Tiger Woods of my own sort because I've been around this stuff since I was from an early age.
Yes.
So it's just where I am. And I chose the path partially too. So
sure. Right. And work ethic is ingrained in every single part of that, I can tell.
Yeah, I always like to say that, to run a business, you got to learn to sweep the floors and clean the toilets, just like doing all the other fun stuff. It's not always going to be just, the funnest of times. We all have to get down and work on things. So get our hands dirty.
Right. Let me ask you this. I want to ask you this question because I'm sitting here putting myself in the seat of our listeners, the self-made nation. They're sitting there going, this is great, but I'm not in real estate. I sell cars, or I sell real estate. If I wanted to do a project, and how do I do that? Like, to me, that kind of feels like, to them, they're probably sitting there like it's in Kilimanjaro. It's like, great, of course he could do that because that's what he's been doing his whole life. But for somebody, let's say, that is looking to get into developing, and I talk to people like this all the time that want to get into developing, what is your advice to them? And really my question is like, what's the first step? And then how do you find the money? How do you find the opportunity? And do you have to, what comes first in this process?
Well, you could take several paths. If I were going to, this is how I did it. Let me just tell you how I did it.
Let's hear it.
Because I think this might be helpful for some people. First of all, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's not what you know, it's what you don't know that you don't know.
Yes.
That's so true. So the way I got started was, here I am, an architect. I could draw site plans. I could figure out how many buildings I could fit on a site. I could go look up the codes and go, okay, this is what the code will allow me to build. And so what I would do is I would spend every weekend and I would go out in Dallas looking for sites that were raw land that were for sale. And I would call the broker, I would get information on the site, and then I would go back to my house and I would design a development on that site. And then I would put all the numbers together and see if it was a profitable deal or not. And that's how I started doing it. I mocked it up like 6 or 7 times on various sites. And one day, a good buddy of mine that I played golf with a lot said, "What are all these deals you do on the weekends?" And I started telling him, he goes, "Can you go show me one?" And so I said, "Sure, I'll show you this latest one I did." I did one over in the medical district by Parkland.
Sure.
I showed it to him. He looked at it. He's like, "Dude, this is brilliant. I can come up with the money if you can get this thing done." And I said, "Absolutely, I can get it done." And, we ended up not being able to get that site. It got away from us. Somebody else had put in a contract on it already. But we eventually found deals and started doing deals. That's how I got started. Now, today, what I would tell someone is if you want to do a real estate development deal, first thing you got to have is a piece of property. If you don't have any property, there ain't no investor, there is no one that's going to listen to you because you don't have anything. It's all a pipe dream. I mean, it really is.
Is that the hardest part of it, is finding the property?
It is, and finding it at the right price.
Sure.
And knowing, and that's why it's important to know what your costs are, what it's going to cost you to get this thing built. Because A, you're going to have to go to the bank and tell them. B, you're going to have to go find an investor if you don't have the money yourself. Or you may have to find investors, and you're going to have to show them, hey, here's how much money I think we can make. Here's what we're building. Here's how we're going to do it. This is going to be my contractor, whatever the case may be. You've got to kind of put all these pieces together in advance of going out to basically sell the deal. I can't, if you'd have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have not been able to tell you this. But today I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if you can't sell something, you're going to have a hard time in this business, because this business is all about selling. And the better you are at your sales proposition to the investor, your sales proposition to the bank, which, by the way, your proposition to the bank is not going to be the same sales pitch you're going to make to an investor. Your sales pitch to the city for why they should give you the zoning you need. Your sales pitch to your consultants on why they should get involved with this deal. If you have an architect that's on the fence, well, I've got other work or this, that, you've got to be a good salesman even in this business. I would have never been able to tell you that 10 years ago, but I can tell you today without a shadow of a doubt, that's what I've really become, is a good salesman. Believe it or not.
How do you go from being an architect to being a great salesman? Like, is that, I'm not saying that you weren't before, but like, is that, do you think people can become a great salesman? Like the people, let's say if people are listening and they're like, okay, tell us.
I think you can. There's training courses, you could go buy Grant Cardone. You could go, right. I believe in Grant. I've been listening to Grant for years, and
sure.
And it took years for it to sink in and for me to really understand what he was saying, because there was a lot of things he would say and it went right over my head. Today, when he says something, I totally get where he's coming from about it.
Yeah.
So I attribute a lot of my sales skills to him. I think I've gotten better because of him. Now, that being said, as an architect, in order to get my designs as the artist realized, I needed to be able to sell to the client why they should build what I want to build, and why they shouldn't strip all the bells and whistles off of it. So, I was kind of already in a sale. I was already being taught in college how to sell our ideas to get them across so people could, get on board with you. So sales is a big part of this, believe it or not.
Right. No, absolutely.
I think anybody can. I think it's a skill. I think anybody can acquire it if they work at it and they want it bad enough.
And be in a place that you have to make it happen. I think that's an important thing. It's hard to become a great salesperson as a side project, right? If it's your livelihood and you have to do it, I think that matters.
That matters a lot. I'm not going to say that you can't. I know a real estate developer here in town who has a a full-time day job with a fully operating business, but he's the CEO of the company, and he can carve out time to do his real estate developments, which, for him, I think it's more of a hobby than it is. It's not a full-time gig. At least he hasn't made it into that yet. But I think, you asked about a real estate agent. Hey, real estate agents are in the best place ever to see great properties that have great opportunities and snap them off the market before anybody else. Whether they pocket list them or whatever they do. And the other thing about real estate, agents and brokers is that they're around people with money a lot of the time. Unless you're just selling residential homes, if you're in the commercial world, you're around guys that have money, and you shouldn't be afraid to grab onto a piece of land and take it to one of your best investor, client, buyer, client purchasers, and say, hey, I've got this idea. Can you help me with it? Or would you put some money in on it? Or, whatever the case may be. So I think there's a way for some people to transition easier than others. Like, if you're a doctor or you're a lawyer or something, maybe you're a lawyer in real estate. Well, that's going to be a little easier for you because you can get your head around the real estate concepts. Other attorneys, doctors, people who their day job is what they're focused on, they need to find someone they can partner with that, they feel comfortable putting their money in on a deal for, and they can get into real estate that way.
Yeah. So put your team together. Who do you need? And put the team together and align them and put the pen to the paper.
Right.
Jay, I love your story, man. Like, it's totally self-made. How I'm just looking at it, where you started, where you are, how you've clawed your way to the top. You found the next branch of opportunity in one industry, and you grew into the person you had to be at every level, overcome fear, develop the skills you had to develop. I love it, man. Just mad respect for you of going for it and doing it. I want to, as we leave here, I want to know, and I want you to leave our audience, what is your advice out of all of those lessons you've learned? What is your advice that you want to leave with our audience today?
I would think if you have a dream and of doing something, whatever it is, whether it's real estate development, maybe you're a nurse and you want to be a doctor, I don't know, whatever it is, I would say, don't lose sight of your dreams and don't give up on them. You can achieve anything if you just decide to take action and do it. And despite what people say, despite the bad circumstances that may occur, just don't give up and you'll get there eventually. It'll happen.
This is great. Jay, thank you so much. And Jay, I know you're writing a book, The Architect of the Deal. I know that's coming out soon. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can get a hold of it.
So that's a deal. That's a book we're working on right now. It's going to be all about a real estate deal and what's involved in that and kind of, who are all the consultants you might need and just basically the nuts and bolts of how a real estate deal gets put together, a commercial deal gets put together. That's what the book's about mostly.
And they can get it on Amazon when it comes out?
I'm sure they're going to be able to get it on Amazon and they can get it on our website when that's up and running everywhere that we're going to.
Okay. So be on the lookout there, Self-Made Nation, for this book. And this is one hell of a self-made story. And there are many nuggets that Jay shared throughout this journey. And as I leave you, I want you to think about that. What is the next thing that you need to do, the leap that you need to take, and what's holding you back? Jay, at every single level, he took the leap, and he was equipped with the tools he needed, the lessons that he learned. And that's the thing that I would encourage you, for all of you that want to go out there, take action, make your dream a reality. Just take the action, burn the boats, and know that you're going to be equipped with everything you need to be equipped with. You're going to attract it. It's going to come to you. You don't need to know all the answers before you take action. That's the spiritual side of success. The finding is reserved for the seekers. So go take action now and watch those resources be attracted to you like a magnet. And that is today's self-made story. Go out there and make big things happen. Take care.